So right now we have Will from Reloptix. Will, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Are you guys? How are you guys?
Very well. We have Tony Marango. He's the president and CEO of the Mac Tutor Incorporated in Chicago. Tony, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
And Dave, you're Dave, just Dave. Dave, how are you doing, Dave?
Just Dave. Pretty good. How about you guys?
The way this all came about was I met Tony through a mutual friend. And we were both kind of the guy who was like, somehow one of us said we had an Apple Vision Pro, and then the other was like, wait, you have an Apple Vision Pro? And like, we felt like, oh my God, we got to talk about this because there's so few other people that have Apple Vision Pros, you know? And then, Dave, I knew you had one. And Will, I know that you've had experience with one and that you guys had even considered making hardware for it. And that was just like, let's just get a bunch of people together and talk about it because like, I think we're at kind of a crucial place, specifically since Meta released their Orion glasses, and since they've come out with the 3S. I mean, I think Meta's looking really super confident right now. I think they saw the Apple Vision Pro, they saw what it can do. You clearly see those changes reflecting what Apple has instituted. You see them in the Quest now. So I think Meta is super confident, and I think Apple, with reports like they're slowing down on the number of units that they're building. So what a perfect time to start talking about the current and future state of the Apple Vision Pro. So Will, we'll start with you. Will, what's been your introduction to the Apple Vision Pro, and what have been your thoughts?
Overall, we got it for measuring purposes and stuff like that, and it was a nice little way to have around the office as well between me and my
Sure.
business partner. Um, but I've done a couple of the different demo units, and we've played around with some of the functionality as far as just setting up room spaces, working in a 3D environment, and noticing how perfectly stagnant like a certain section was really blew me away. Like you could have
Sure.
your app wall and things of that nature. Uh, how seamless it seemed overall is what kind of blew me away. And it was the first time I'd really experienced that.
Yeah.
But I have seen with working with Meta products and what have you too now, how quickly they were able to kind of play with that and kind of meet the moment
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
add a lot of those features pretty quickly to the 3 and the
Yeah.
3S
So much of
platform. So
Sure. So much of what Apple has given us with the Apple Vision Pro, it may be backed by the hardware, but it's also their software ideas and the way they're implementing things. So maybe Meta's not going to match Apple one for one with hardware, but all they have to do is just make a couple changes in the software. And as far as I'm concerned, they've greatly caught up in those areas. Tony, how
yeah,
about you? What was your introduction to the Apple Vision Pro?
I have been a long time fan of VR, many, many years. And when Apple announced the Vision Pro, I thought, oh my God, it's the combination of two of my favorite things. So it was a day one purchase for me. And my experience with it has been largely positive. I think my initial impression for what it was going to be is different from what it turned out to be. And it took a while for me to mentally reconcile that because my Quest is primarily a social instrument with which I interact with other people, and it's been that way for years. And then the Vision Pro has no such social aspects. And at the time, I thought, well, this sucks, right? That this kind of sucks because it's not what I'm used to. But then I changed my thinking to like, I don't expect social interactions from my MacBook Pro, right? Or when I'm sitting in my workstation, it's not like I'm out to have a good time with my friends. So once that paradigm shift happened mentally for me, I think I could appreciate it more for what it is. And it's kick ass to watch movies in. Like, let's be
It
honest.
yeah.
it is, and I have something to say about that here in a bit. Dave, I think you and I fell in the same boat as Tony there, where we're just
Hmm.
VR fans. So what was your introduction to it?
Saw them announce it. I thought, oh, great. A VR headset, no controllers. Apple's great at this stuff.
Yeah,
It's built well. I want to get one. So I got one. Um, Obviously, like the iPhone, when it first came out, there's no apps, right? Just the stuff that Apple has on, the 5 developers that actually took on the projects and
Right.
released on release day back in February. And then did some digging around because I've got an Apple developer account that I don't use. Really need to turn that on and actually use it. But they've got a bunch of tutorials where you can make some of these fun little puzzle games. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool because you're not immersed like you are in VR. You can actually see your environment, so it's AR.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of utility that can be done with this. I think you were mentioning that the measuring and wall design stuff. I used it to measure our backyard
Oh,
back in
really?
April. Uh, Not for anything important, just because I could.
Yeah. How accurate was it?
It was about 3 inches off on one
Oh,
particular side,
yeah.
so
Wow.
it was within the tolerance
Yeah. Yeah.
that I could
Oh,
accept.
well, so that it's a really good metaphor for what I'm seeing of the Apple Vision Pro, where it seems to be almost everything that I need it to be, but it can't seem to figure out exactly what it is. Part of that is
Mhm.
because it's entered itself into the market where there's already VR and AR headsets, much more VR than AR. But it's also Apple, and Apple has a reputation that when they release something, they're going to do something different and big, and they're going to do it right, or at least more often than not, like 75, 80% of the time, they do it right. And then everyone kind of follows. I've not gotten that feeling yet with the Apple Vision Pro. In certain aspects, I have, but I feel like they don't even fully know what it's for yet. So, what it's for. So, Will, tell me what is the Apple Vision Pro to you? Is it something you can see yourself using? And if not, why?
I think it's similar. I mean, I've heard this metaphor this said in the past, but I feel it's sort of how it was when you bought a PC in the late '70s, early '80s. It was a box of possibilities. It's Apple's manifesto to what XR or VR is in a device, and I think as people take it on, I think as far as developers are concerned, I think you'll see where the trickle down comes down in the next generation of this headset,
Yeah,
where
definitely not this
the people
generation.
that'll have this, no, I mean, and I honestly think that they're not too sort of bent out of shape about it on the Apple side of things because they knew that a majority of people weren't going to get it or they weren't going to end up keeping it. And despite the naysayers, I think that they have been successful at what they were trying to go for. But I think that's what it is. Is it is um, it is a device that can show. It's their way of showing up the competition of this is our idea of it. This is the things you've been working on for years. We took that, blew it out of the water. Yeah, we don't have a
Yeah,
lot of software for it right now, but if you can see what we did now, just imagine what we can do in 5 years.
right,
And
right.
I think that's kind of what that is right now.
I don't think there's anything about the release in its current state that Apple didn't already predict. I think they knew they were going to lower their requirements, their building of them, lower supplies, just like they do with the iPhone. Like they don't just keep manufacturing the same amount of iPhones at the beginning of sale, and then a year later they start to slow them down and get it ready for the next one. I think they knew they were going to have a burst of a ton of people that were excited. I think being Apple, they knew that they were probably going to sell out of their original demand. I think they also knew all the flack that they were going to get because they already knew what product they had and what it could and what it couldn't do. People complaining that it's just, iPad apps floating in space. So I think for people to think that, like, haha, like the Apple haters, they're not selling as many
Oh
as they
yeah,
thought. I knew it. Like, no, I think it's obvious to me. They're super smart people, and as is Meta, as is Google, as is everyone that wants to make fun of whatever Android device. All those people are way smarter than me. They probably make a ton more money than me. So I'm not going to knock any of those devices or those guys. But Apple is smart. They knew what they were, what they had, and what they didn't have. Dave, how do you primarily use your Apple Vision Pro?
A lot of times it's on trips when I'm flying on plane rides that are more than 2 hours.
Yeah.
Put it on my face, plug it in, and watch movies without having to be bothered.
Yeah.
Played chess with it a lot. I did the Disney What If a couple of times, and that's the big seller. That anyone I let try this out, I'm like, no, you got to play What If. Don't do the dinosaur thing. Just don't. Just do this.
Yeah.
And that's been a big hit.
And so, Tony, how about you? You had mentioned you really like it for watching videos.
I do. I think the visual quality of watching a movie on that thing versus Quest 3 is basically night and day.
Yeah.
And I also use it to remotely connect to my Mac. So I'll sit here at my desk, I'll pop it on, and I really like that. I don't have the best eyes in the world. So that's hugely helpful for me. And I'm looking forward to ultra widescreen.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll add another dimension to my work.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of time in front of my computer.
Yeah.
And it's still neat to me, so much so that I do it 3 to 5 days a week.
100%. I'm in the place. I like it so much that I will just use it. It's like getting a brand new lawnmower and then mowing a couple of days early just because you're so excited to use it. I feel like it is the very first AR solution that works. I think Meta was almost there. I think Meta had all the key components. They had hand tracking and everything, but the hand tracking was, little flighty, not very accurate. I remember like Dave and I would play Demio and we'd use hand tracking on the Meta, and you'd pick up a piece and then all of a sudden it would stop seeing something and drop the piece, and then you've messed up the entire thing. Where that exact same game, like Demio on Apple Vision Pro, it's like I'm literally picking up a piece and putting it down, And it wasn't like that when Demio first came out for the Apple Vision Pro, it wasn't that good. But since then, they've already made updates, and now the hand tracking is crazy good. On the movie watching, I was watching movies like you go into big screen, you go into virtual desktop, and I remember feeling as a VR guy, here come the nerds. Now, I mean, I'm like, the king of nerds or whatever, but I felt like, well, hold on. Like, I love VR and AR already. And here come all these Apple jocks, and again, I'm a huge Apple fan, but like talking about like, they know what this is all about. And the thing that they want to say that this device is for $3,500 is for watching movies. And that was kind of insulting to me because from my point of view, I have met friends and I've strengthened my relationship with my family, and I've done all these amazing things in VR without the Apple Vision Pro, that for someone to say, oh, the Apple Vision Pro is totally worth it to watch an hour and a half movie for $3,500. I'm just like, no, it's so much more than that. So, so these social experiences, do we see games with social experiences coming to the Apple Vision Pro, or is it going to be just like the iPad?
Apple has never been strong in gaming.
No.
I'm sure we all had a Pippin, right?
No, I did not have
one. Oh, yeah.
I would.
So that's a deep Apple reference there.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they care. Because if they did, Walkabout Mini Golf would be in there and VR chat would be in there. But I also think that people that are drawn to those games, albeit we are outliers, but they're kids who want to play games, and kids don't have $3,500.
No.
Right? That's 7 Quest 3s.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't see Apple ever really being strong in that category because they just don't seem to know how. And the fact that there's no controllers precludes you from playing so many games, unless it is like a Demio with a roll of the die and move the character. But you couldn't do Pop 1 in there, right? Like you have to have tactile sensation.
Yeah.
And then Apple's solution is, hey, pair an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller, which works fine, but that ruins the immersion, right? Because then it's like I'm playing a flat screen pancake game just on a big ass screen.
There is a company that recently announced they're producing 6 degree of movement controllers that are essentially a knockoff shape of the Quest 3's controllers that are coming out.
Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I think, if anything, That's why I say it's a headset of like multiple possibilities. I think they could potentially get into gaming, but they're going to rely on third-party developers to
Yeah.
work on the hardware and stuff like that, because the software and the processing power is there,
Yeah.
like
It's
the
definitely,
level of quality. Yeah. So I honestly think they could, but yeah, I agree. They haven't really cared individually on it, but I think their hope, I think, was that they would get in the hands of a developer or a game company. They'd be like, the possibilities are endless on this,
yeah. Yeah.
and they would push forward and blow their own cash to
Yeah.
bring said game to market.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
as a hardware manufacturer and accessory manufacturer for headsets, um, what is your thought with these guys that are doing this Kickstarter? I mean, it's, from what you told me, it's a giant risk to make anything like that for the Apple Vision Pro.
yeah. I mean, in general, it can sometimes be that way for VR in general. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it is. They're going to put a lot of time and R&D into this. And yeah, they may be grabbing a couple components off the shelf to make it happen, but either way, they're potentially producing something that only they're going to sell thousands of what they should technically be selling millions of to actually make their money back on. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
still may or may not happen, sadly. That's
Yeah.
the sad result of a low um, turnout for
Yeah.
devices like this.
Yeah. It's a risk for
Well, if
anything
they
right now, even making an app, I think, for the Apple Vision Pro. There's
And Will, maybe you could answer this for me. So would they create this and then just hope that software developers would make games to support it? Or would they work like for the 1% of Vision Pro users who are going to access King's exceptional video about accessing PC VR on the
Uh,
Vision Pro so then you can play Half-Life Alyx using controllers from Kickstarter? It just sounds outlandish to me.
it does, I think, for like side quests and stuff like that, it would take a certain type of nerd to be said to go to that extent to do that. But I think a lot of where those controllers came in is more for the professional realm. Like I have used in the past, and one of our
Uh,
main purchasers at one point was well, people within the company, not the company itself. Gravity Sketch, and Gravity Sketch is a basically three-dimensional sketching and design program, and it does kind of require that level of accuracy. And I think those guys, if they really wanted to put time and effort on the AVP, would probably end up buying those, or architects or what have you. But again, it comes back to software.
Do you guys get the gut feeling that Apple is grabbing all the big hits from the Meta Quest and going to those guys and saying, "Hey, make us something now"? Or do you just think that they're not really pushing it?
so you have to have a Mac to develop for any Apple device, right?
Yeah.
So companies like Vertigo Games may not want to use a Mac Mini because it's cheap to compile the code for Arizona Sunshine that's going to take 2 weeks to compile on a Mac Mini to put into the Apple Vision Pro. But other companies like Demio, which would probably take 3 or 4 days to fully compile on a Mac Mini, as being the cheapest option. Not every developer company that's not sure this is going to be a big hit, especially with 100,000 units sold, it's going to go
Right.
buy a $4,000 Mac Pro. They're like, no, Bob, go get the cheapest one off the shelf and put it in and do the thing, and let's see if it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I was speaking with the developer today.
Sense.
It's a game called Airspace Defender. It just came out for the Meta Quest. It's like Mission Control, or I'm sorry, it's like Missile Command in 3D space. It's super cool, hand tracking and everything. And since it's hand tracking, I asked them, so do you think that you are going to bring this to the Apple Vision Pro? Because in my puny mind, I'm like, no big deal. Recompile it, put it up on the store. And they were like, no, between licensing and, likely, like you said, hardware, time and development cost, it's going to be, let's say, 6 weeks before we even get something working over there. So like, no, we're not going to do that. That's a really big runway, and why isn't Apple going to that guy and saying, here, take the tools, we'll hook you up, and then we'll figure this out later. Which is
They
disappointing.
want you to buy the laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah, they're not hurting. They're not hurting for money. Like I
Yeah.
think the second biggest company behind Microsoft now, and for the $3 trillion company. Um,
Well, it seems like if they're going to do that, like if they're going to make people make the investment on this headset,
yeah,
they should at least give them a deal on the software. Like give them something. It's like Delaware, they they give people tax incentives.
yeah,
Apple should give incentives to developers that actually do stuff
right.
for them to come over to their side. So
So let's talk about like a want list. Like, what are the things that you feel like the Apple Vision Pro is currently missing, or small little issues that you have? And I'll start with mine. I want a app switcher, because right now you got to keep going back to the home screen, choose the app, unless you somehow access it via the spotlight. But I like off the top of my head, like you got to do the hand this, you got to come over, tap that, and then choose spotlight inside that menu to get the spotlight. And the whole purpose of spotlight is so that you can easily bring up like a search prompt and type in something, quickly. And it's the opposite of that. So Tony, we'll start with you. What's the thing that you wish you had right now from the Apple Vision Pro?
I wish I had the ability to download apps from my Mac or my iPhone onto the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
And it is such a pain right now. So my current workflow is look on it and pray to God that someone develop an app. Get the name of the app, email it to myself, open the email on my Vision Pro and download the app.
Yeah.
Because if you click the link and it takes you to the Mac App Store or the iPhone App Store, it says you can't install this on this computer. And I already know that. But I could go to Meta Quest website and say, download Ghostbusters to play this weekend, right? Or whatever, and then load it on my headset. And it's done. And Apple, come on, what are you doing?
I think they definitely have their priorities. And the things that we're talking about, I think may be on their list, but I think they have bigger things that they want to hit. It's just not my priority list, Another thing that I want is when and I think this is a bit of a problem. When you open up a window, it goes right in front of you. You open up a second window, you put it here. A third window, you put it here. Now, just in front with where my neck can currently move, I have 3 windows. So my next option is to go up, which isn't very comfortable, or down, or I start going behind me. It's too, even though you have the entire world in front of you, it's too small a space. If I'm in my office with 4 walls, that makes sense. But what if I'm outside and I have a giant, 300-acre field in front of me? I want to be able to push things far away and bring things toward me, and it's currently not that. So is that a sign that this was released sooner than they had the entire thing worked out? And then they've asked it of you.
So I think that's just a software thing.
Yeah.
I think the developers got it out as quick as possible, right? They had to meet their timeline. So this is what we got. We can window. And you can push that window as far back as you want and then put another one on top of it.
You can, yes.
But you can't, I think what you're looking for is a way to clip, like Rolodex, through that stack of 5 windows you've got to your right.
Yeah. I'm on
so
Stage
you can flip through it.
Vision Pro.
Yeah, Stage Manager. There you go. Yeah.
Right.
I'm from the 80s. So they don't have that yet. But give them another couple of years, but somebody's going to watch this video. Oh, damn, they're on this.
Yeah.
And then they're going to run to Tim Cook and be like, watch this.
Yeah.
Then all the money. You get all the money.
Exactly.
I feel that they did not show us why, and I did a follow-up video after the announcement. I think it was 3 months afterwards. I did a video with a friend, and I told him my biggest problem was that Apple did not show us why we already be using the Apple Vision Pro. If you're giving me iPad apps or my Mac desktop, but I already have a monitor, already have an iPad, already have an iPhone. Why do I want 2-dimensional apps floated in space? Clearly, you're introducing a 3D environment to me. So why don't we take cues from VR? And my favorite example is always like in the game Rec Room. You have a watch. When you look at your watch, it pops up. You have an interface. You can tell it to stop, and you can put your hand down. You can type on a keyboard, and then when you put it back, it all goes back into your watch. well, I'm in AR. I want, why can't I have a video right here? Why can't I have the time over here? How, when I do this, why doesn't this launch a specific app? I mean, all the things that I thought AR were for and what the hardware that I'm buying from them should do. And none of it's there. And so I'm horribly disappointed by that. So Tony, what do you see Apple doing next in this space?
I think we're probably a year and a half out until the next one comes out.
Oh, that
It'll
long?
be more accessible.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's reasonable.
Yeah.
It'll be more accessible, but not Quest accessible.
Yeah.
It won't have the weird eyesight thing on the front.
Yeah.
It will not solve the issues that we have discussed today, though, unless there's app development in a big bad way and Apple figures out what their messaging is going to be. And I got to say, it reminds me of when the watch came out, right? Because Fitbit was already a hit.
Yeah.
And Apple came out with their watch, and it's like, we know you have a Fitbit, but this watch is about fashion and a computer on your wrist. And look at Beyonce is wearing one, and it's 24 karat gold. And people just didn't dig it until they started adding more and more fitness and health features.
Yeah.
And they determined that that was the way to go. And now we're on Apple Watch 10, and they're basically like, yeah, it's like a Fitbit on steroids.
Yeah,
you remember those?
I don't see
it took them a while.
It seems like everyone has an Apple Watch on.
I remember when the iPod first came out, and I worked for Apple, and we drive around the city, and I would see people with white headphones on.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was so rare because it was such a staple, right? And I think to myself, like, that person gets it.
Yeah.
And the first time that I would show my iPod to somebody and they're like, how many songs now? Right?
Yeah.
And they would get it. But that's so much harder to do with Vision Pro because I'm like, hey, you want to see something awesome? And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, you got 15 minutes for calibration? So it's just not as easy to share it.
The way you said it was perfect. Yeah. I felt like you were this guy, like somehow someone made their way down an alleyway in Chicago, and you pop out like, "Hey, you got 15 minutes of calibration." Well, and it's gotten better, right? So Dave, have you noticed the changes that they've made in order to make that calibration process better for a guest user?
Not for a guest user, but I recalibrated mine for fun the other day, and it was slightly better. It's still off, but it was slightly better.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so the way they have it now is for guest mode. Someone goes through the usual thing, the 3 rounds of pinching, magic dots hanging in space. And then after that, it says, do you want to save it? And they can say yes. The next time they put it on, it's already there for them, which is great.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a little presumptive that someone's going to be so excited that they want to get back into it again. I can't see many people doing that, but at least it's better than not having it. But it is a really lengthy process. So have you guys noticed that after you do that, is it directly in the center for you, or is it off to the left or off to the right?
I've had a bit of issue just as a glasses user.
Yeah.
It's not, you have to do calibration, but then it also has to do the visual calibration, the inserts and what have you.
And so you inserts
again, just handing it off to somebody else who wears glasses too. If they don't have the inserts, and it's a whole thing, and it takes even longer for the calibration process.
Right, right.
That'll hopefully improve.
Dave, you had mentioned yours. Is yours off center?
So I have a weak left eye, so it appears to be more rightish. I mean, my left eye is more of an extension of my peripheral vision on my right.
Okay.
If I close this eye, I can see, but it's kind of out of focus.
Okay.
It's not really blurry. It's just not good picture.
You think that throws off the calibration?
Oh, it does. I actually had to lock it into my right eye and not try to use both.
Gotcha.
So the calibration, that's why I say it's still slightly off, is because I'm only tracking one eye.
And that was an accessibility feature that you enabled.
Correct.
Are there other accessibility features that you've noticed that help compensate for that?
If I turn on the eye tracking dot, so I can actually see what
Yeah.
it thinks I'm looking at, and then I can adjust, look up and to the right a little bit more to get it onto the L.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Will, as a person that makes hardware for VR, AR, visual lenses, do you feel that Apple has knocked it out of the park with the line of sight where you look at it, you pinch, you move it, it's 100% accurate? Or do you feel like is it only 90% there? Or do you feel it's 95% there?
It's impressive, but yeah, I would say it's getting there. It's in the
Yeah.
90% or so. But I have had a couple times where, especially when you're doing fine-tune things, where it's trying to track your eye between something that's very close to each other.
Yeah.
I have that where it's ended up messing up as I'm trying to type
Yeah.
but I it is impressive as far as how even with my hands fairly low that it's still able to pick up the pinching.
I think they've really proven to me that hand tracking is feasible. On the Quest, it was so shaky, and I don't mean my own hand was shaky, but I felt like 2/3 of the time it was great, but that's enough that I kind of go, no. It's like when people use Siri and they don't get the answer they want and they get frustrated and they just kind of throw Siri aside. I think people do that with hand tracking. They'll try it a couple times and they'll get frustrated. They'll never touch it again. But like ChatGPT is now out there as his other AIs, and they are like 99% of the time they get exactly what I'm talking about. And now I'm way more willing to use them. That's the way I feel about Apple's interface. The hand tracking is so good. Typing has gotten better with each new release of the Vision OS. Tony, what have you found in that regard?
I paired it with a Logitech keyboard and trackpad.
Yep.
And if I'm going to use it for extended periods of time that is not mirroring my desktop, but trying to integrate the existing apps, you got to have it. Yeah, you just got to have it. Even trying to like pinch and zoom a video or manipulate anything in Safari that's smaller than a watermelon, it's just almost impossible. For me, the Vision,
it's definitely not a long-term keyboard to do this in the air.
Yeah, right.
No way. Or like look at each letter and then pinch your fingers.
Yeah.
Kill me now.
But have you gotten good at that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think when the iPhone came out, I remember Steve Ballmer, at the time CEO of Microsoft, was saying, like a $700 phone without a hardware keyboard, no one's going to want that. And as much as I was an Apple fan at the time, there was a bit of me that was like, I think he's probably right, and I'd like to be proven wrong. And I think over time, rather quickly, Apple proved everyone wrong. So yes, looking at keyboard and pinching I'd rather not do that. But with each iteration, it's gotten better. And the point that Will made, where you don't have to do this, like it's just I'm sitting back, relaxed, and just barely touching my fingers together, and it's removed that barrier of entry just to go ahead and get that done.
I think some of the frustration that people are getting with it is because of the price tag. People come into Apple expecting things to be perfect from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And they're less likely to deal with those small changes initially because they figure they've spent $4,000 on something that should be like, whereas the people that have been in Quest probably have had 3 or 4 generations of VR already. So they're just happy a keyboard works. So, they are more forgiving than somebody who comes in who hasn't been through those and have then spent, $4,000 on this fancy Apple headset.
Right.
That's another thing that's probably causing the frustration.
Dave, you said that you use the What If, the Marvel What If. What's been your experience when you show people that?
Good so far. I haven't had anyone say that they got motion sick, because I hear that with the Quest a lot. They're impressed by the graphics. They're impressed that it actually has gameplay that you don't need a controller with. There was a short hiccup. There's one thing where you got to go like this and do something, and it didn't track one girl's thing right off the bat. And he was like, "How do I do this?" I was like, "What you doing? Just stick your arms out farther."
Yeah.
So she wasn't so close, right?
Yeah. So Tony,
that was about it.
Have you sold any Apple Vision Pros as a result of just showing someone a demo?
No, it's, you know, I tell myself I have to get this. I have all these clients in the city.
Yeah.
I literally teach Apple products, and you know, I got a couple thousand clients, and not a single person has bought one. So I think
Yeah.
that's telling. Like I've literally not given one lesson.
Yeah.
And thank goodness though, because the sharing of what you are seeing in VR and then conveying it to someone who is wholly unfamiliar with
Right.
the medium is far more difficult than conveying how to use like App Switcher on iOS. I'm not sorry in the least that I bought one though. Like I still love it. I use it relatively all the time. I just wish there was more to do on it, right? I wish there was something more drawing me back.
I heard on a podcast, and I think this was just so perfect. The guy said that the Apple Vision Pro is an AR simulator. That Apple built a simulator for what AR will be in the future when they release their eyeglass, or whatever their real AR solution that everyone's the iPhone popular version of this. That's what this is, uh, and man, I can't help but say that that's so spot on because $3,500, that's a lot of money for someone just to play around with something. And if you have it, and those that have tried it think it's really freaking cool. But same as you, I've not turned anyone into buying one because first of all, $3,500. So what's the price? If this weren't $3,500, let's. I mean, of course they're going to come out with the cheaper one that's going to get the price down. That's going to give the basic experience, without the thing in the front. What's the price that's going to get everyone to start picking up this device?
$9.99.
$9.99. All right, Will.
Yeah.
I'm going to say probably 1,500 or so. I was trying to give them a little order to work with, 15 to 2, and then if they were to include like a cellular capability,
Yeah.
I could see where they easily Verizon or one of these would sell these for 24 months. That's what's going to hook people is that they can pay for it and stretch the pain out over 2 years.
That's all we need is more payments, more monthly payments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, along with their Hulu and their Netflix.
Right now. Dave, how about you?
I'm going to go with the 9.99 as well. The only reason I say that is because we all have probably paid $1,500 for our phones, right? And Pro Maxes, whatever's.
Yeah.
So they're going to look at that and be like, okay, well, we definitely have a market in the $1,000 range for all these people to buy the big phones. And that's where they'll stick it.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to the Meta Orion, and I'm not making that up, right? That was the name of the device, their new AR device, the glasses that aren't yet for sale. Was it Orion?
Project Orion.
Yeah, it's Project Orion. Does Apple have the equivalent running inside the lab right now? And it's in the exact same place. Like Apple isn't going. Well, I was going to say Apple wouldn't release a product like that, but that's I think what the Apple Vision Pro is. Does Apple have the same device like the Orion in their labs? And when do we see them release it? And so, Tony,
100% they do. 100%. Yeah. They do.
Right, I agree.
And they are not ever going to be the first to the race, just like they weren't with the VR headset. They weren't with MP3 players. Yeah. They weren't with cell phones. But then they come in late, and then they kick ass.
Yeah.
So I think 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
5 years, and Meta comes out with theirs, I would bet, in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and 2.5 years and clunky. They're not going to try to get it perfect like Apple will.
I mean, when I feel my Quest 3, which I love, I love my Quest, okay?
Yeah.
I love it. But it feels like a toy.
It does.
When I hold it physically in my hands, it feels like a Viewmaster compared to a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not even close. It's not even close. So I think we'll see that again and again and again.
Yeah. Will, what is the form factor that's going to finally get everyone wearing this? What does it look like?
I think it's one of those things like Raymond Loewy, this big designer. He said, basically things have to be innovative, but not so much so that it basically makes you stand out. So
Yeah.
I think they need to make it in such a way that it becomes a thing that people feel comfortable carrying around. So it has to look like a pair of glasses, like an
Yeah.
actual pair of glasses, as opposed to bloated Wayfarers like we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to have to be something like that, where it's going to basically look like you're wearing a pair of Oakleys.
I think that to complement what you're saying, remember when Tesla came out and Tesla was, here's a big battery inside a car and it's expensive. And everyone was like, wow, that's cool, but I can't afford the big battery. And then someone at some point said, we don't need a full battery because you're not driving the entire equivalent of that battery. You're not driving 300 miles every day. You're driving 50 or less miles on the average, except for maybe on the weekends. So why don't we make a car that has just a much smaller battery that's much more affordable, so that for 5 days of the week at least, or maybe all 30 days, because you don't go anywhere on the weekend because you're a lonely, bored YouTuber like me, then you can actually just charge that 50 miles, get that 50 miles every day, every now and then go over. Because that's the vehicle I have. I've got a plug-in hybrid. I couldn't tell you the last time I got gas. I'm sure if I think back to a day that I had to travel out of state is when I use it. I think that's what's going to happen with AR. I don't think it's going to be the perfect glasses that are exactly the size that now it's comfortable and everyone likes it. I think there's going to be something that gets you halfway there. That's going to be just enough and, mixed with a nice price point. And all of a sudden you're going to see people wearing them. And then, as I said in one of my videos, that's when I think we get to say, Nana, Nana, Boo Boo, we told you guys. How many people have made fun of any of us about wearing something heavy on my face and you're wearing goggles? Like, no, they're all going to be wearing it and we're going to get to tell them I told you so. And I cannot wait for that day.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is as wireless technology, Bluetooth or other close end wireless technology gets better.
Yeah.
These phones are already a powerhouse.
You're right.
So if they could have it where this was the brain,
yep,
this could connect to this and do a lot of the backwards. I mean, we kind of already have that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. But where that falls is like with the Apple Watch. It tries to use your phone as a Bluetooth connection. And, 1 out of 5 times my watch doesn't ring. But it didn't. It's right next to the phone. But you preceded that entire statement with they figured out the wireless that it's working even better. So, yeah, if they can fix that so it's 99% of the time, then, yeah, I agree. All right, so let's wrap this up. So, Will, what is your hope for the Apple Vision Pro? And then when you're done that, go ahead and tell us who you're with and if you have any websites or anything you want to go to.
Again, the Apple haters are going to say that it was a failure because a lot of people didn't adopt it, but I don't think it was ever meant to be purchased by everybody, and it was definitely another situation similar to buying computers back in the day. There were a lot of people that bought machines and they had to teach themselves how to run those machines, and
yeah,
they did it because they were tech, tip of the spear people.
Right.
I hope that there's enough people to pick them up, and I hope Apple makes it easier for developers to get a hold of them, even if they're not going to give them a discount on the hardware. At least give them a discount on being able to develop software for them, and then we'll hopefully see that come about. I am with Reloptix. We make prescription lens inserts for VR headsets, so you don't have to shove your glasses in your headset and scratch your lenses. But reloptix.com, RELOPTIX.
I have them. I love them. I hate these glasses are obviously way too big for a Quest, for anything else. I love how easily they snap in, man. I really do like them a lot. So Tony, how about you? Where do you see, what do you hope for the Apple Vision Pro?
I hope for continued development.
Yeah.
I hope for it to come down in price, because ultimately I want everyone to experience the joy and wonderment that I've experienced in VR over the last several years. And I want to share that experience with them. And I want it to be more accessible. And I want it to be easier. And as much as we have our complaints and our picadillos about where it is now, the pioneers are always the ones who get the arrows in their butts, right? And we're out there ahead just a little bit.
Yeah.
So with that, I would say
it's closing time. I was trying to tell you.
you like that?
Dramatic effect.
No, with that, I would say visit me at www.mactutor.com. I realize anybody watching this show does not need tech support, but we sell gift cards and we can help your parents so you don't have to.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Merry Christmas, Grandma.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And Dave, what's your thought on on where you would like to see the Apple Vision Pro going?
I would definitely like to see more units, a cheaper unit, and obviously more games developed for this platform. I think Apple should give some kind of concession to some of the more popular developers to say, here, release all the games. We'll give you a break on hardware, the developer license you need to put this out there. Maybe 25% instead of 30% for the first year.
Yeah.
Give them some incentive, make that 6-8 weeks worth it.
Yeah.
And then let them go on, full price and require more hardware a year and a half, 2 years in, but that's what it's going to need.
Are you volunteering?
And, that's what I would like to see.
Program?
I already paid for it and I already have the hardware. So.
Not supposed to say that, man. You're supposed to get them to buy you something. So, Will, Tony, Dave, guys, I really appreciate you showing up to do this. I know it's late for all of us, but thank you guys. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks for
you.
having me.